No, stay.
He was here yesterday. Yeah.
Have a break. You know, time to catch up with people and time. No. With Australia, flight wise, fly don't. So I either leave at 4, which is too early. 4 tomorrow. So 4 tomorrow, so it gives me a day to catch up. Anyway.
Very hectic. Because it's an extension, right? So very hard.
You don't strike me as being
So
shy.
it's just all work. Yeah. Not every few months, on demand when there's a need, but even if there's no need, that will for 2 to 3 months or something. Yeah, correct.
I will
So
say,
try to delegate to someone
we have things to
there's some new stuff as well. You have to train, right?
in the
And just
northern
let them.
hemisphere. Winter, they have too hot.
So I'm doing
And too hot all the time. You go into a building.
exploring and
It's too
trying
hot.
to fulfill
Here, it's always
But,
put a coat on.
all new opportunities available for my new China business as well. For the leader in Singapore, I know it quite well already. Okay, but new China is a bit new for me. So learning the ropes as I try to contribute as well. Really people first. It's really hectic. Yeah. Yeah.
We're basically.
But yeah, but it's okay. I don't mind. I mean, okay, it's just not perfect. I want to do it at the same time. If it's a little more
I'm allowed, okay.
I don't think I've worked last year. Yeah, this year is like super.
Yeah.
Every year I thought I can work harder, and every year
I have some friends
the figure.
who used to live in Australia. She was from Italian parents, born in Australia. But she used to work for me. But when she finished work, she and her husband, who's Australian, actually Maltese, Australian Maltese, decided to go to Italy and live the rest of their lives in Italy. They bought in a little place called Oliveto, which is near Arezzo. Yeah, Oliveto, near Arezzo. And they bought up in the hills, old home, they renovated it all. Very nice, beautiful views, and they retired there and enjoying life. Yeah.
Time box of right for car time. No, I don't. Huh? Yeah. Because my parents stay with me and have a helper, so they come. Yeah, so when I travel, like, because the household cannot buy that. Alright. Oh,
Yeah. very nice. My wife and I spent a bit of time in Italy. We like Italy. It was Tuscany, Puglia, in Alma, Elba, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, so I spent a bit of time.
Yeah, we formed Sinotrust 10 years ago. So that's the the roots are very deep. All the sectors. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sinotrust, you know, yeah, correct. Good.
Yes. I've been good interaction here, good conversation, good conversation.
So a lot of the like
I'll never stop trying. I'm telling you,
fully 100%. That's the difference.
Absolutely. Happy to do so. I'm here, so I'm available, whatever works for you guys.
But there's also yeah, but I think it's it's competitive. It's also correct. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. I think it really depends on whether the person will give you sorry. Yeah. Correct. Yeah, we also
There's
percent as well. Yeah, right. But China data generally, like I think most data is okay except the actual data.
Okay, good afternoon. Welcome back. I'll try again. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Welcome. There you go. Welcome to the G20. So yeah, not like a behind me, but you can move a bit closer if you want. But I think we've taken up most of it. So, as we start. So I hope you found this morning, as I mentioned several times already, the objective of this morning is to introduce now I think it's hopefully okay, but it's to introduce new subjects, so to really spur the thoughts and discussions around where the industry is going, what the industry, and how we as an association can monitor those and help to understand those as they go forward. So the first session this afternoon really is just to get feedback about, are these topics relevant? Are they ones we should be really continuing to work on? And speaking to Michael just before we started around, next steps and how do we monitor, and we will, subject to feedback, bring these subjects forward in our events, in our next conference and the like. So it's really a matter, this is your opportunity to provide feedback. And I hope lunch was good, but it wasn't so good that you're all going to start falling asleep on me. But we really would like to get some feedback on the topics. Other topics related to those that we haven't covered that you think we should, which would be good. And then we want to then just really get feedback from you about what's happening in your territories so that we can take those on board and monitor those and provide support for those. So 2 separate sessions. We don't have to go all the way through till 4 o'clock. We don't have to go to a break. We can do both in one session and finish up so people have time to go and do what they need to do. So last time we were here, we had a reasonably fast session in the afternoon, but it was productive. So I'm not going to draw it out. I haven't got a list of questions. So if you all enjoyed it and can give us some initial feedback and we stop there, we stop there. Okay. So I don't know. Normally I have to call on people like Adrian to kick the conversation off, but I'll try not to. Yeah. Why are you? So, the topics this morning, we're talking technology, we're talking digitalization. We've been talking about that for some time now. I think it's a topic we have to continue to talk about, but we're seeing the developments of technology and we're picking up the new developments. So that's why we brought quantum computing in. Michael's mentioned, agentic AI, which I think is a new development as well. So there are these things that are they relevant to you? Is it useful to have these discussions? So that's the sort of first point. And then the data aspect, it's always going to be relevant to you, but we want to really understand, if there are particular parts around data. I draw on the forum that I went to on Monday and the round table I led, which was all about, the new alternative data and the growth in that. And it is quite substantial, that growth. So, those are some of the areas. So I don't know if anybody's bold enough to kick things off. If you do, yeah, otherwise I'll give it to Adrian. But there is a microphone, so you have to share the microphones if that's okay. They're all live, so I don't know if anybody wants to make any initial feedback. No, everybody's all going live, isn't it?
I'll go.
Good.
Good on you, mate.
Yeah.
I was really looking forward to the quantum computing session, though a lot of it obviously went over my head, and I not because of the presentation or the presenter. I think he did a fantastic job of trying to dumb it down for people like me. I don't think you can dumb it down any further, unfortunately. So I really enjoyed the thinking around that as well, that, it's important that we're getting some exposure to, future tech trends that may or may not impact our industry in the same way that, I think if you spoke about AI 5 years ago, 7 years ago, it probably would have gone over our heads as well. So I think, kudos to you guys for putting that session together.
Thank you for that. And okay, yeah, thank you. I mean, I think about some new topics as well. I mean, it's difficult because I suppose it's our role to come up with the new topics, but yeah, we were very much keen on the quantum thing. I mean, Adrian kicked it off in KL, and I think we will come back to it. As well, I think we realise it's in fairly nascent state at the moment, but it's going to come very quickly. So do that, Adrian. Sorry.
No, I as I said this morning, 10 years ago, we wouldn't even thought about AI is doing today. And if you go back, maybe 20 years ago, we wouldn't thought about using the cloud and how well you can use it today. And we're in a changing world, and it's going faster than ever. But what I thought came out of this morning is not just that was to show the future curve, if you want, but there's a number of things we talked about. And I thought the Forrester presentation was really good, that it brought to our eyes how people are using the internet today or not. And a lot of people sell in the B2B. We sell, not so much maybe consumer. I think in some of our discussions, we've got to split it between the consumer side and the B2B side. And I come from B2B, so when I talk, it's that theme. But the marketing way in which it's done and the SEO processes today are changing radically, and you need to wake up to that really, really fast. But it's not a brain breaker. It's something you just got to understand it and then apply accordingly. And what came out of the tips here were really, really good, I think. And then what Mike brought up, which actually I spoke to him just before, but what fascinates me is I think we should all be talking about OpenAI, because and understand what it is. And it doesn't matter how small your business is, we can get you there and we can help you in that journey. So don't be frightened of it. But OpenAI it doesn't really matter what type of database you're running. It's the way in which they talk to each other. It's the API interfaces to switch data backwards and forwards. And okay, when you hear me talk, you know that I love the theme, and my head is always in it. But we are moving very much to moving data around with APIs today, rather than integrating files and sending files to each other. And I think we would like to hear, or I make the suggestion that we generally should be talking about how we, between ourselves, can work with OpenAI tools. The other point is there are other platforms out there like Snowflake. I know I mentioned it a few times, but this is the beginning of the opportunity to share data with each other without even moving it. people access to the data on the Snowflake platform. And that there are not too many people on the uptake of that at the moment, but it is one of the fastest ways to transfer data between each other going forward, and even to put products on top of it. And then when you talk about generative AI and these apps where intelligent, what are they called, generic apps, these are super tools and so simple to put together. You just have to get your head around it today. And what we've done is we have an API platform for ordering and purchasing business information. And we've actually, with AWS, we put the generative AI and the agentic tools on top of it, so that anybody running, like an SAP's client coming out and looking for a company like Novartis in Switzerland, they can actually find, without being manually instructed, to find where it can find Novartis AG in Switzerland and where it can buy data from it, can go through the whole purchase process using AWS as the, if you want, the selling agent, pull the data back and disperse it throughout the system of that purchaser, which you called dark. What was the word you used today? Somebody used the dark. Yeah, it's like you don't know who is buying it, but it's in its infancy. And I'm still trying to learn a lot more about it, but this is one of the ways in which you'll be able to leverage your data information sales in the future without necessarily knowing who, and have somebody like AWS or the others, or Microsoft as your agent. So I just throw a few things out on the table for discussion. And some of them are not, it's not difficult. You just have to spend a little time to permit your head to understand it, and then it will work.
Thank you. Thank you, Adrian. Appreciate that. I mean, I suppose my question from following on from that is really how do some of our smaller members, some of our more are seeing this whole thing? Is it too much at the moment? Is it something that you're looking for? Because we need to try and support you as smaller members as well. I mean, there's obviously so I'm interested in the feedback. Is it, yes, it's nice to know, but we're not looking at it at the moment, or is it, yes, it's on our agenda? Just want to try and get some feedback from all quarters, really. So.
Yeah, so I didn't want to sound like Trump's cabinet where everybody sort of agrees with what he said. I mean, so essentially all of what y'all had planned was good, but I thought, some of these emerging themes is what we should pick on, for the benefit of this group. Of course, OpenAI is something which Adrian is, he talks about it in every opportunity that he gets, and that is important even from a business standpoint for all of us considering the future, what the future holds. The second topic which is of great interest to all of us, but it's still a bit of a black box in many ways, is around ESG. Right. So we've had discussions on ESG, in the previous forums, but I think with some of these topics, it'll be good if we can have some continuity with these discussions, because it may, ESG as an example, even from an Indian context, there is a lot of regulatory interest that we are seeing. There is a lot of interest from investors, that community, wanting to see their portfolio companies ESG compliant in many ways. And there is also effort being taken by companies to slowly move towards being ESG compliant and contribute in their own way towards, climate change and the benefits as a result. We've also, heard from many about, different platforms that companies have built, or the tech-based products that companies have built to address, ESG requirements, whether it is to do with scope 1, 2, or 3. And we've also partnered with a good tech provider so that we leverage on their technology competence, and we leverage on our on-the-ground competence with respect to customer relationships and also data, content, and all of that. but it'll be good to hear from this group, not conceptually. I think conceptually all of us understand a bit and that will get stronger in our own way, but it will be good to understand, different experience that we have on the ground with respect to implementing ESG. That's where the challenge lies. Conceptually, it looks brilliant. I mean, there are enough and more papers and videos that perhaps will help us strengthen our understanding and overall sort of get conceptual clarity. But on the ground implementation is where the key is. And ever since we tied up with our partner in India, we've built a very strong pipeline of about 20-25 potential customers who we believe at least 50% of them will sign up. One is on the verge of signing up with us. It's in the contractual phase, but and maybe I'll just pass on the mic to Tushar, because he is leading a lot of those efforts on the ground and giving everybody a sense of that what is happening in India, and that's not the opportunity, of course, but what we believe we will get to see in the implementations that we will start doing hopefully from this month onwards. We are on the verge of closing one deal and maybe at least 4 or 5 deals in the next couple of months. But it'll be good if this group can share. That's what we lack. I mean, we lack on the ground experience with respect to what we encounter and how do we sort of overcome those challenges.
Yeah, I'll just add to it. I think ESG is primarily looked at environmental, social governance, compliance, but it is very closely linked to financing also, right? In fact, 3 weeks back, Mohan and I were at Global FinTech Fest, and a day before we got a news that Japan's largest pension fund has completely pivoted towards impact investment. Said anything we are investing, it has to be compliant with ESG. So all the fund managers now will remarket their, you can say, positioning towards impact investment, etc. Even in India, RBI is focusing on, the Central Bank of India is focusing on climate finance. In fact, one of our founders was in Hong Kong 3 weeks back. Even Ant Financial is also looking at clubbing financing with the ESG. So, of course, one part is on the reporting, sustainability reporting, which is prevalent in Singapore. Even California has SB 253. India has their own business responsibility and reporting requirements. But how is it tying up with the financing is something which will be very interesting to know, because it brings we as data providers or business information providers, companies who's going to be benefiting from reporting this particular data and of course extending it to their supply chain. And finally the banks, because ultimately I think Kabir's presentation was more on the lending side, but then banks are using it. How will banks use this specific data? Because this is also new to them. They have not traditionally used the green reporting or sustainability reporting data in lending. I mean, how are they going to use it? So these three pieces have to be tied up together, and this will be definitely a big thing for us in coming years. And of course, there's a lot of unstructured data in ESG reporting, and we have seen it very closely. And we've worked with multiple industries now. There's a lot of use case pertaining to AI as well. I mean, that's what we are seeing in India right now. Massive use case in reading that data and deciphering in terms of how the reporting has to be done for each part of ESG. So I think if we have, as Mohan mentioned, in terms of what other providers are doing it, I think CRIF had ESG reporting. Probably few others might be venturing in that area. It'll be very interesting to know, because it kind of converges us, the company, the corporate, as well as the lender together. And yeah, I mean, we'll be happy to hear.
Yeah. Jean here from Experian. So actually, in the past few months, I launched a new ESG section in my report. And just to answer the question, right, as to how is viewed alongside credit data, my experience from banks is that even though they give preferential rates for ESG loans, they still look at credit. So the ESG element is to give you a boost in the rates and to see if you're acceptable in the program, but it doesn't mean they ignore the credit side of things. So I think it makes sense to view ESG not as a different component to credit reports, but as a supplementary aspect. And I think, at least per my own research, I think there's a lot of focus on ESG, but for the longest time, only the biggest companies have the resourcing to prepare a report, and therefore only the biggest company have a rating. So as a result, the ESG data I choose to focus is actually on SMEs, whereby I don't focus on the rating score, but I focus on the raw materials, which is any underlying credentials they have. So that's my approach to getting ESG data started, because the fundamental issue is that not enough companies are doing. So the data coverage will forever be an issue, but I think we have to start somewhere. So I think it will be really good if, as an industry, we are all able to pool our resources or the kind of products we have together, so that if you do, reporting for medium or big size entities, I do for the SMEs, then at least we have a, suite of products that we can sell to each other's customer to complete the ecosystem. Yeah, because I think there's just too many out there, and there's different types for different companies. Some want to go by the SDG, some want to go by objective, some want to go by themes. You can't have one solution that meets all purposes and all use cases. So from my own learning, I think it makes sense to collaborate and to be very clear who we're targeting, who's the lender you're interested in, what data points they need to be able to proceed with the loan or the financing. So that's my sharing. Thank you.
Yeah, that's very good.
Maybe just to add on from a Malaysian perspective. So maybe to address the point on, what do we need to get this to become a bigger initiative on ESG data? From the many conversations that we've been having with the different financial institutions who are our customers today, and industry players who are beginning to look at this data as part of trade risk evaluation, to me, it seems like, it'll continue to be on a case-by-case basis where the different parties involved, you would basically self-declare your ESG data at the point of which you are going to have some sort of transaction. That is still going to continue. The point at which the data will become available as something that's available in mass is going to be when regulation changes. So ISSB reporting is coming to Southeast Asia. Malaysia I think has already adopted, maybe Singapore as well, and it'll slowly transition to all Southeast Asian countries. So it is going to be mandatory to submit this to the regulators moving forward, and therefore there will no longer really be a need to go and start collecting this data. I mean, it will be partial. I mean, you won't have to submit everything that a bank would want to see for green financing, for example, but some of it will be there. For the lenders themselves, there seems to be two distinct use cases. One is for the lending piece. Yes, I think exactly per what you had said on a supplementary data point to credit, completely, that's absolutely what they are looking at. But it's also interesting that they still require case-by-case additional document submission, because in a lot of cases, the financing is to finance some sort of green investment that I am doing as an organization. I'm looking to change my boiler system or whatever it is so that I can become more green moving forward. And I'm looking for funding to invest in that asset. And so I need to actually submit project-specific information to get that funding. And so even though you already have some basic data from the credit bureau, you're still going to have to submit a whole set of additional data points just to get that green financing for that specific project. That's one. So yeah, for the data collection, I think we have started, and I think all credit bureaus are already doing this to a certain extent, but it's not a mass thing yet. It is still very segment by segment, where we know our customers are very keen on this data. There are segment specific data collection that's going on. I mean, but there are hundreds and thousands of entities that we should have this data on that we don't, because there's also the element of scope 3 where you need to know supply chain ESG also, which we don't have at this point. The other element for, I think, understanding ESG has been portfolio for the entire bank. So as a bank, I need to be green. And for me to make sure that I am green, all my customers need to be green. So that's where we notice this type of mass data becomes useful, is when, if say the regulator already has that, a bank would pool everything that is available on all their customers so that they can declare, me as a bank, I'm dealing with all these companies, and my consolidated green score, including my customers, including my suppliers, is A rating or something like that. And then that qualifies specific types of investments and so on. Yeah, so those are the two use cases that we are noticing at the moment.
Okay, thank you. I mean, that's very useful feedback. I mean, seems to me then there's a transactional element, ESG, and there's a general compliance aspect, isn't there? So, I mean, one thing that we've been toying with ESG, and Ingrid, obviously, as you know, has been chairing a working party to input to the ICCR paper on ESG, and I thank many of you around the table who've been party to that. But I suppose when we look at somewhat there's a sort of reining back going on in Europe around ESG at the moment, which is the main driver. So it's interesting because almost it's sort of Asia's catching up, but catching up with a previous sort of view about ESG from a European perspective. And I'm just wondering how much the change in approach in in Europe is going to sort of impact how much you have to do, put it that way. So I think it is very useful, but I think do get the point, and I think it would be good if we could do some sort of quick survey round the members and say, you know, what are you doing on ESG? And maybe, Ingrid, we can work on building something like that. But do you want to say anything with your work on ESG and the committee-wise or views?
So what we did from ICCR perspective, so there is a working group or working, I just mix up these different words. Okay, working group, where we worked on a paper to collect, let me say, ESG regulation and which kind of role our industry is playing in this perspective. So it was very much, let me say, early because of the EU regulations. They were at that point very strict. So the paper was very EU focused, let me say. We had some couple of countries included, so outside of the EU. But in the meantime, everything was really accelerating with our new government in Germany and other changes we had. Also that the EU countries said, okay, these strong and strict regulations hinder us, so we are no more competitive because everything is so strict, especially when we talk about the supply chain directive. So in Germany, it was the Lieferantenketten-Sorgfaltspflichtengesetz, so one word. And it was very, very restrictive. So it was like, okay, you have to know from the supplier of the supplier of the supplier of the suppliers until the end, whether the human rights are respected, whether the last one is really working according to the environment and so forth, and climate and stuff like this. And then now everything changed also because of Draghi, so our Italian friends. The Draghi report said, okay, hang on, in EU, so we have to change because of the issue on the competitiveness. And while we have on the other side in Europe all the let me say, technology, green technology. So we are leading there. So it makes no sense if we restrict everything. So, and now, currently there is a discussion forth and back how to simplify the EU regulation. So recently it was said, okay, now it's called omnibus, so to simplify everything, make it no more so strict, especially when it's about a supply chain directive. And now just a week before they decided, okay, oh, hang on, we have to delay, while specific countries, especially Germany and Italy, I'm always looking to you because it's Griff there, Italy was saying, okay, we are not going with this very strict supply chain directive further because we want to move on. So, and this is the status currently. At the same time now, I'm coming back to the ICCR paper we are working on. We said then, okay, we have to consider that we will have a lot of volatility because we have many countries, they are starting and working on regulations which might be different to other regulations, but at the end it should be the same because we are doing global trading together. So, and then also to consider other markets going around the world, so South America, Africa, and so forth, to bring also this, let me say, the focus and what's going on in these countries about regulations and also about our industry. So where we are also with the involvement, and at the end, it's clear that our industry is playing an important role. So we are doing it already, and at the end, as discussed, it's about the data. So especially even if companies, even the regulation is valid for the big size companies, and as you said, proven for sure the banks, because they have to be green, and this is a common topic around the world. And it doesn't matter whether it's a company or whether it's a consumer, you have to prove that what you are doing is green or has a certain level of being green. And so we have to bring all these together, and again back to the data. When it's about SME data, yes, that's an issue on one side, but on the other side, what we have learned in Europe and what I have seen in Europe as well, the small size companies, they're using it as a marketing, let me say, a value proposition. So I think that's everywhere around. So we are producing green and everything is green. And here you can see, I think that's something we are coming back to the web data. So to your website and what we have learned today from Paul. So I think there is a great value in using the web data, and our role from my perspective is to verify. So, but I think the data are, when we talk about the SME data, they are there. And then we come to close my long speech now. When we come back to these specific papers, what you have mentioned, Bhuvan, yes, you have to give some, let me say, approved or certified paper at the end to the banks when you want to get money as a small size company, as well as when it's with the as well as you want to be a supplier from someone. So that's true, and that still need to be collected. Yes, that's something which might be not so easy as a credit bureau, because the banks, we know that if they are asking for something, they get everything. But if you are if you need a supplier, so the question is as well, if the need, or is let me say, they are forced to deliver a certification and more information to become a supplier, it also depends on the size of the small size company. When we look at leading industries, so talking about automobile industry or chemical or pharmaceutical industries, yes, you want to become a supplier, so you will give everything so that you are doing the deal. But when these are, let me say, small deals, so not sure whether you are providing such kind of insight and certification. Finally, we are going to continue to work on the paper. So there is a budget available, even as there is in US this interesting situation, a budget situation. So there will be money available, and I will come back to you once we are restarting, and I can share, but it's an internal document, nothing to distribute. So what we have so far, it's a draft, yeah, and it's not up to date. So up to date in the sense, according to the new discussion in Europe, but I think it gives some support on where we are and what our industry is delivering so far. And it would be great if several of you would join in addition to the group we have, this working group then. That's it. It was very long.
Yeah. Yeah. No, well, it's passionate about it, I think, Ingrid is the word. But yeah, thank you.
Neil.
Yes, Mark.
Okay. Yeah. I think from a data gathering perspective, we've heard about the SME. I think there's an educational piece here about why they should be declaring their emissions in particular being one of the key attributes that's being looked at. Certainly in the UK, that's one of the big aspects that is being looked at. And it's quite difficult. And so this is obviously from a lending perspective on the banking side. There's, I'd say that one of the ways that perhaps people in this room could probably leverage the relationships with the energy utility companies in terms of release of a common shared data on company emissions, location data, and that sort of piece, which would help. Other areas that you could look at as well is looking at ISO certificates. And it comes back to the piece around the marketing. So more and more companies are looking to try and gain that, and it gives them a good credential. Yeah, the only other thing I'd say is that there is whilst there is that feel that that the marketing piece is a strong play, there is this prevailing wind coming in the opposite direction, where you have companies like BP that are now retracting from their strategy to move towards more sustainable energy and moving back towards the traditional oil-based operations, and that is obviously being manifested through Trump as well, that doesn't believe in that either. So whilst there is there's a view one way, there is also this prevailing wind coming the other way that is not necessarily as encouraging. This is just some general comment.
Thank you. Yes.
It's all very well, but in reality, how do you rate something? And the biggest problem with the ESG is it's so nebulous. Almost each part of the ESG is so nebulous to score. And I think many people have been struggling with this for a long time. So I have difficulties with it, honestly. How do you're doing a credit report on a company, a small company, whatever country in the world, but there's not enough information to give you, there's not enough public information to give you access to be even to common sense try to assess a company like that. And that's where I see the difficulties. And I know very well in certain countries, like in Portugal, you can do a rating of Portuguese companies because they get all the utility information. But go do it in Indonesia or in the Philippines, and I'm sure you've got a few you can add. But I'm really struggling with it to see how we can systematically do this.
That's true. I mean, just as a comment, we are seeing that, but what we are trying to do slightly differently in India is we are trying to make this a consent-driven exercise, working with our customers, because ultimately you need to know the supplier and all of that. So that can't happen in a discrete mode. We need to have complete buy-in of our customers. Only time will tell with respect to how successful we are. Now, I just had a broader question for this audience. You know, the reason why I
Wait,
brought
may I ask in between something to the supplier stuff? What are you going to do if Europe is saying, no, you don't need to know everything about the supplier. You only need to know from your very next supplier whether he is compliant.
No, that's
are you
what
going
we
to
are
do?
focusing on. I mean,
Yeah,
once
okay.
we-
So the very next,
Once
okay.
we crack that formula, maybe we go down the line. But right now, the immediate this will be to address the first
Yeah,
supply
first,
to the
first
end
year,
customer.
first year supply. Yeah.
But my broader question is, you know, after hearing everybody, whoever spoke on this topic, is this even a topic for this forum? Because as far as I know, we are using ESG information as a component of the overall credit or risk report. That's it, right? Of course, some of us may do this, maybe in a slightly broader manner in our own respective market. But if you were to look at all of us as representation of the industry, information industry, and we are all here for business, right? So, I mean, while knowledge is important, ultimately it has to translate to business. So, do you think this is even just like how credit reporting is and risk reporting is, which forms the core of what we do? Do you think ESG is something which will become a core of what we do in this industry, or it'll just be a small component? And Adrian, you are a veteran, right? You've seen different aspects of.
Yeah, and we see it across different countries. But my answer is Jean's advice is the best one. What she explained before is you're going to have to do the credit rating anyway because it's practical, it's logical. There are so many factors that you can measure, and this is just an add-on. Yeah, but it's an add-on. I mean, we do 10 risk reports on countries in Southeast Asia, and we have the political factor, the economic factor, and we've added the technology rating in on a country. We do ESG on a country separate. We have not added it into the total score of the country because we're of a similar opinion to what Jean was saying, and I think we should address it like that in the next future. It'll change. But the other thing, as they brought up, you have to take into account the US is going in the other direction now. You've got this counter wind, if you want, and we really don't know where it's going to go. Plus, it's a nebulous thing you're talking about anyway. So that would be what I think is the wisest way to go forward. I'd back Jean's comment 100% there.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for that. I mean, I think
So something like so just on ESG, because you had another point. Yeah, just let me add something. Currently, so in Europe, and I think I'm not sure about S&P whether you have already ESG rating. I guess so. Yes. So we have in Europe, so in EU and also in UK now, a regulation about to the ESG rating provider. So it's the next step is already done. And then the next question is, so if you have a standard rating plus ESG rating, so the opinions, they are different. One part is saying, okay, this comes together, because at the end you are looking at the whole company, including whether they are ESG compliant, and the others are saying it will be two ratings. So I believe as well it will be at the end just one rating over the time. At the beginning it will be two ratings, and at the end I'm sure this will be one. I'm not sure. So S&P, do you want to say, Damien? Because when we have a rating
Before
agency,
Damien answers, just one thing. A rating. Rating agencies are regulated today. Credit scoring is not in credit scoring, so you have to be careful how you choose your words. Second,
talking about ratings, not
okay.
scores.
Okay.
Otherwise, I would have said score.
In the UK, anybody rating ESG is going to be regulated now. In the UK.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
since last week.
Okay, but scoring is something different. So it's between rating you rate big companies and okay, just so we're clear. This is what's going to be regulated. Yes, yes. So if that happens there, then it's possibly going to follow in other countries. Sorry, I took the wind.
I cannot speak to the rating side of the business, so I don't belong to that. So I can't speak to their methodologies, their analytical methods, etc. But I do believe, because we do have a ESG part to our business within market intelligence, and we do know that certain parts of that business has been going through a prudent regulatory environment, even from a reporting, a governance, a TCFD. That whole team there have been looked at and are falling under some different guidelines as we kind of go forward, all part of the view of looking at ESG ratings and the analytical rigor that goes around that side as well. Probably just picking up on ESG, which I think one point was made around lending decisions, green financing, all of that. Inclusion of, will it be one rating? Will it be not? I don't really have a personal view on that, but what I do and what I have seen, and I think most of us have seen over time, is that frameworks have gone from sustainability reporting or alignment to TCFD, for which we know for listed companies in some markets, there are guidelines from the exchanges around aligning to TCFD. I think New Zealand was one of the first markets and exchanges that actually started to release that. To many markets which has started to hit Southeast Asia over the last 3-4 years around climate stress testing, looking at physical risk, transition risk, and that now coming into the regulatory framework. And then the third piece around ESG conversations that we tend to have, or anyone dealing with credit risk modeling side of it, is around how do we bring ESG factors into our credit risk models. And that has been kind of, for me, my experience has been one of the third pillars that's kind of coming towards the end, and is a bit of a struggle for a lot of our clients, even our large banking clients, to figure out how we bring and what do those factors look like, and how does it influence the overall rating when we are making a credit decision from a pricing and an underwriting perspective. And I think somebody mentioned portfolio. I think is quite big, looking at the portfolio, stress testing across the portfolio as well, to find that balance. I think somebody mentioned it, maybe it was Mark, somebody mentioned BHP, there is an unnamed large sovereign wealth fund in this region as well, who has quite a strong investment thesis wrapped around ESG and sustainability, but has also said over time, we'll never move away from certain parts of energy, oil and gas, etc., because it also does make us money and it's highly profitable. So there's that balance that needs to be made, right? So whether you're an investor, whether you're a bank, whether you're a corporate, where you choose to do business, there are certain markets and there's certain industries that are highly profitable. It's about trying to find the balance on how you're going to balance your portfolio and your exposures.
Great, thank you. That's very useful. And I hear you, I think, on ESG. I think it's a topic we will be covering in the conference. Do you want to make a few comments?
Not on ESG.
Oh.
I come from the land of Trump, so America, sorry. So there's ESG is not a happy word there in that land. It is completely different topics. Can I move on? Yeah. Okay. So it's about unstructured data. It's for this group is how I haven't heard a thing about unstructured data and the use of technology for unstructured data, extracting information. Everybody over here is very fluent in structured data. So what about news? And what about the unstructured data as an alternate data set. And news is the most prevalent and common use of unstructured data everywhere in the world. So as a group, I think my suggestion is that a lot can and should be done and should be talked about, because the structured data is going in a certain direction. We can all debate that, and the effect of the LLMs on the structured data, we can debate it. But the unstructured is where the opportunity is at scale. And doing individual deals with the publications across the world. So I've done a bit of this in my past. I used to be with a small organization called Moody's. We did this. It's very, very difficult to do it at scale. I can see my colleague here from S&P nodding. It's very, very difficult. It's a request to the industry organization to see if something can, if it can facilitate, because publications are in, the news is prevalent in every single country in the world. You name it, they have some form of a newspaper or some news channel. Most are digital. So if there are some agreements, deals that can be structured, it would benefit all parties, not only at this table here, but also the news publications, because they're a dying breed anyway. So that's my question. If anyone is doing something, I would invite them to share. So it's a question and a request at the same time.
Thank you very much. I mean, my view on unstructured, I mean, you're right. I mean, there's huge amounts of perceived benefit in unstructured data. I think sometimes the case has still got to be proven, but it's like everything, until you get the data, you can't work it out. So, but I sense it's something that the larger sort of rating companies are dealing with, because they know, you know, it has an impact, and will probably have a stronger view about its impact. But I'm just trying, yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I mean, you know, if you're running a more regional type of operation, you probably have more, struggling really with the structured data and enhancing that than actually adding unstructured. So, but I do think it's something. But yes, the question is a valid one. You know, to some of our smaller members, you know, would a discussion on unstructured data be of use? So, and I don't want to put these things up on a conference agenda or whatever if it's only going to apply to 10%. So I think it's a valid one. So I don't know what the view is on unstructured data, but just to go back, I hear you on ESG. I think there's a good discussion there. We have that, and we'll continue to research on that one. But what about unstructured data?
Can I just add a point there as well? I think it's a very valid one. The struggle around how do you manage unstructured data? How do you look and get the insights out of it? And I think there's a lot of work being done around sentiment, trying to figure out, is there any type of sentiment scoring that's being done? We've done a fair bit of work around, and there are other providers in the market that do work around transcripts for a while, and trying to get sentiment scores out of transcripts. And if you look at some of the historical earnings calls, just take Elon Musk, because that's where you probably see it the most, where you see certain words are linked to, certain words can be linked to certain sentiment at the end and certain impact on the share price during the during and after the earnings call. So there has been a bit of research, backtests and etc., looking at the impact of certain events, certain words that are being used. S&P Global has created some sentiment scores around it off transcripts. We actually use it on our CEO and CFO as well. And they use it as part of their training to figure out how they deliver messaging back out to the market. So looking at it from the other side, and what impact does it have? But it's way beyond that, just transcripts as well. We've had quite a while, and I guess, you know, wearing the hat from a Moody's perspective as well. And I think speaking to a number of people the last night and today, there's a big focus on surveillance and monitoring, early warning. How do I find triggers that are going to give me a positive or a negative, whether it's a credit deterioration, a credit improvement? And that could be not just on structured data points, that could be through sentiment as well, and different flags that come through. And for quite a while, we've had requests from our clients in China to even try and drive sentiment scores off social media data, which has a lot of volatility in it as well, which we know. So I think it's a great topic, and I think it's a big one that's front and center from a surveillance monitoring, early warning, trigger type of perspective, red flags.
Perfect. I think it's a very, very important topic and subject for us, and also I believe for the whole group, because the next level of growth for all of us will come when we look at assessing these smaller companies, right? So the universe of smaller companies who have access to credit now is growing in a big way, and we've got to figure out ways to assess them in the right manner possible, so that the decisions that our customers end up taking is closer to being correct. You know, that's it. I just want to touch upon how we've sort of addressed this. Unstructured data is very, very critical when it comes to smaller companies, as all of us know. And news, again, is a very important component of that. So what we tried doing was that we came across a South African company that used to do this, and then we partnered with them to see if we can get a good essence of news on slightly, at least mid-size companies. And we sort of I mean, we looked at them for almost a year, but it didn't give us the result that we expected. So we built algorithms in-house, and India is not a difficult market, but you have so many languages. There are regional newspapers, you know, and the smaller companies are located not necessarily in the metros, but in tier 2, 3, and 4 cities. So it's important to capture the algorithm to capture you know, news from different regional dailies that gets published in the Indian context. So we built our own algorithms, and we are successfully sort of been able to capture and also make that as part of the formal assessment when we assess smaller businesses. One, we also built sentiment scores, you know, based on trade data, based on what the customers were to talk about products and services, so on and so forth. So importantly, you know, sentiment scores, again, there's another company in the US called AlphaSense, you know, which is known to us, one of the founders, etc. And they use the similar models to, you know, predict what is likely to happen with stock and so on and so forth. So we picked on some of the models that they use to build our own. So it is extremely important. I mean, Neil, to your point, whether to make this a part of a subject of discussion, I think for the industry to also grow and for us to start looking at smaller businesses as confidently as we look at bigger businesses, maybe at least some time, if we can devote towards discussing this so that it benefits everybody, we should perhaps try and do that.
Thank you, Mohan. Thank you, Damien. I think it's it's a good subject, and we take notes, and I think we could have a good discussion of that at the next conference and next leadership forum around that. So that makes a lot of sense. Mike, just from your perspective, obviously, you know, FICO scoring, ratings, all that sort of stuff. I know you're not in the big rating world, but have you got any views on this sort of, you know, sustainability? Have you got any views on the sort of unstructured data? Because I know you guys are looking at data all the time. If you say you haven't, that's fine. I'm not going to put you on the spot, but right.
It's going to be a lot of suspense for not much of an answer. Fortunately, my domain with the unstructured data, so I can't offer a very informed opinion in terms of what we're doing today. But perhaps in the future, if that's going to be a topic, I can make sure that we're better represented. Yeah.
Thank you. That's very useful feedback. And so, yeah, I think ESG is obviously, I didn't expect to spend so much time on ESG actually, and it's but that's good. That's what these forums are all about, and I think unstructured data is a good one as well. So yeah, another one. Okay.
Not ESG and not unstructured data. One more suggestion. It's something you mentioned in your session. It's AI, but it's more specific. It's AI agents. As a suggestion is, I see this every day. I live in Silicon Valley. I see this every day. The evolution is the fastest I've seen in my life, and I've been around the block. It is unbelievable. The speed is just mind-boggling. There should be, my suggestion is to have a standing session on the evolution of AI agents, because this, what we are talking about today, is not even close to what it will look like in 6 months. 1 year, forget it. Nobody can tell you. So that's a standing topic because it's of interest to everybody and it will impact all of us. That's for sure.
Thank you. Adrian?
But I think it comes back also to what Neil said, is we have to think about all the members that are a part of the BIA organization, and there are small companies, you know, like in New Zealand with Linda. We have to think about you and how, what do you need, advice, help, whatever, that you can still stay a part of this ever-changing world if you want. And some of the things we talk about is over the heads of a lot of people. And even though if it is over your head, the idea here is that you get to know something about it and get your head around it a little bit and go home and maybe delve a bit deeper at it. But we have to think about how, as an association in business information, how we can give people help in the answers that they're looking for.
Thank you, Adrian. That's a good link, and that's what I was alluding to. I think, you know, we do have a very diverse membership, and you know, I know, for example, I'm going to pick on Pradet now from Thailand. You know, we know that Thailand's got particular more pressing issues around SMEs at the moment, you know, which is where, you know, some of this stuff, you know, I'm sure NCB at Thailand would love to be involved in, but they're still trying to deal with the fact that, you know, SMEs are, you know, going in a very different direction. So, and I'm sure, Monica, you've got some different views. So if you feel like adding some comments, feel free, but if not,
so I guess it's not that it's over our head, it's just that we've got limited resource and you've got to prioritize resource, and AI and this evolution is not our only objective as a business. So we've still got to run the business day to day. And it's also so difficult because, and you guys will have the exact same problem no matter what size you are, which horse do you back and how far do you go, because it's changing so rapidly. So when you've got a bigger team, it's a little bit easier to spread your resource and test and learn. And so the challenge for us as a business of 40 people is which, you know, what do we focus on as a priority? And so that's, you know, what we've got to do, but we've got to be smart about it. So it's not about doing it all ourselves. It's about working with like-minded organisations that can help us along that way. So it's really a really big mind shift. You know, our IT team would like to do it all and keep it all contained and build everything. So it's really about sort of reminding them that we can't be everything to everybody. So we really need to find the right people to work with. So there's no denying, I think, that you know, the resource issue does become challenging, but it does for every organisation. A bigger organisation takes more people to run, so it's this economies of scale. But there's so much happening, and it's constantly moving, and that's probably the biggest challenge that we all face, right?
okay. What about unstructured data? Because that must be more core to what you do. Because I know you guys do and have done. Peter's always told me a lot around accessing what other bureaus around the world would love to access in terms of public data and things like that. So I'm sure that's probably a topic that would be of I mean, you could probably contribute to it, I think, as well. From your
so again, I'm not the most technical person to talk to it, but we are experimenting with AI and and it definitely helps. And so, but of course, consumer data is quite different to dealing with business data. So, how does that fit in with the regulation and what can we do comfortably with it and what can't we do? So there's a lot to be considered, and then how does that sit within our environment and all the rest of it. We are an AWS business, so all of our company runs on the cloud, and it has done from the very beginning, which is quite helpful because I think we're a long way along the journey, in that sense. And AWS are a really good partner. They've got a massive network of organisations that they can introduce you to. But and there's a lot of opportunity in unstructured data, particularly in that business space, all the alternative data sources, and that's definitely the way it's heading. We're very restricted on the personal side when we're dealing with consumers. Our regulators tell us what we can use, what purpose we can use it for, what data we can store for how long, so it's quite restrictive. But on the business side, the opportunities are quite open, so it's quite exciting.
Thank you. Thank you. Burdett, did you want to say anything about Thailand? Don't moan about it too much.
Yeah, I think in Thailand, as a bureau, we are dying for processing the alternative data, but the law doesn't allow us to do that. I think we all know that alternative data is very useful for our bureaus and also other industry as well, because it lets you know what really happened to that consumer, and it really let you know what happened. Is that SME been existing? Because you can learning from the utilities data like water bills or electricity bills, right? I don't know when Thailand gonna be allow us to working on the alternative data. Maybe I could be retiring first.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, any other topics that people want to bring to the table? Well, it all look like you may be desperate for a cup of coffee or tea. Now, we can go two ways here, okay? We can close the forum now and you can have a cup of tea and coffee and say goodbye to each other. Or we can spend a little bit more time, well, three ways actually. Spend a little bit more time, maybe just giving the opportunity, 5-10 minutes, if anybody wants to provide updates about what's going on. Or the third option is we have coffee and we come back and we have another hour's discussion on ESG. So option three is probably, option three is probably not going to work. No, well, I'm guided by you guys. I mean, it's been a long day. There's been a lot of information around, and what I want to do is I want to make sure you get the most value from being here. That's what we want to do, because that's what we're here for. So you benefit from it. And if you've had enough benefit from it now, and and we thank you for the feedback so far on topics, I think it's given us some good direction. We're in midst of planning, obviously, next conference. You all know the dates, hopefully, in Manila, on 17 to 19 of June. And so this, when we put this together, this session together, is all about feeding into that, but feeding in more longer term as well. What do we need to do? And my initial thoughts are, I think we need to probably come up with a list of key topics that we're focusing on. Well, I think we have that in our minds already, but we need to probably just share that and make people aware of it and give them a chance to opportunity to add to it, so that you know what we really are focusing on in terms of topics, and that will change, obviously, very quickly or very depending. So I think we'll work on that. And I think we'll bring those into the conference in Manila and continue to work on them. And as you know, we'll take these away and we'll reflect those in our postings and the work we do, the good work that Ingrid leads. I give Ingrid complete credit for that in terms of social media and newsletters and the like. So I think, tea and coffee is available. We're at 3:30. We were going to close at 4. So I'm going to make the executive decision. If you're all happy, you smile at me and say I'm happy, then we'll close this forum. But I'd like to thank you all for coming. Thank you all for your input, and we will continue these forums. We don't know where we'll be this time next year. Anybody wants to volunteer for us to hold it in a particular country, I'll be very happy to have those discussions. But in the meantime, enjoy Singapore FinTech Festival. It's not as good as this forum, I can tell you, but enjoy it. If you're not, safe journey home, and look forward to seeing you all in Manila in June. And in the meantime, from all of us, the management team, Peter, Ingrid, and I, and our board directors, we thank you very much for your support, and we hope we can continue to support you in the coming years. So, thanks very much.
Thank you.